You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your Security Plus certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Risk analysis is the natural next step after completing a risk assessment. While an assessment identifies assets, threats, vulnerabilities, likelihood, and impact, analysis focuses on turning all that raw input into something usable for decision-making. In practice, this means assigning scores that allow risks to be compared, ranked, and prioritized. Without analysis, the findings from an assessment remain a long list of concerns with no clear sense of what to tackle first. Risk analysis transforms that list into a roadmap, giving leaders a structured way to decide which problems demand immediate resources and which can be deferred or accepted. One of the most straightforward tools in risk analysis is the use of scoring scales. These scales provide a structured way to capture the severity of a risk. Numeric systems, for instance, might rate risks on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the most serious. Categorical systems use labels such as high, medium, and low. Both approaches can map directly to action thresholds. A high or a 5 may require immediate mitigation, while a low or a 1 may be documented but not acted upon right away. These scales help simplify complex realities into clear priorities. Of course, not every factor in a risk situation weighs equally, which is where weighting comes into play. Weighting allows organizations to emphasize what matters most in their context. Asset value, exploitability, exposure, and potential business impact are often combined into a weighted score. For example, a vulnerability on a highly sensitive financial system may carry more weight than the same vulnerability on a test environment. By carefully adjusting weighting factors, organizations ensure that their scoring reflects their unique priorities, aligning technical findings with business realities. This step is essential for making risk analysis meaningful beyond raw numbers. Technical scoring models, such as the Common Vulnerability Scoring System (CVSS), are widely used in cybersecurity. CVSS assigns standardized scores to vulnerabilities based on characteristics like how easy they are to exploit and what damage they could cause. These technical scores are helpful for engineers but may not capture the broader business context. Business-focused scoring considers the impact on operations, finances, and reputation. Reconciling the two perspectives is critical. A CVSS score might indicate a medium vulnerability, but if the system supports a hospital's emergency department, the business impact could elevate it to high. Both lenses are needed for balanced decisions. Threat intelligence signals can add urgency to scoring. A vulnerability that exists on paper is one thing. A vulnerability that attackers are actively exploiting in the wild is another. Intelligence such as the release of proof-of-concept exploit code, reports of ongoing attacks, or alerts from government agencies can dramatically increase risk scores. For example, when a major web application flaw begins appearing in ransomware campaigns, organizations should inflate the score of that risk, even if its baseline technical rating was moderate. Incorporating threat intelligence keeps scoring grounded in current reality rather than static theory. Another important refinement in risk scoring is accounting for control effectiveness. Controls are the safeguards already in place, such as firewalls, intrusion detection systems, or strict access policies. If controls are strong and well tested, they reduce the likelihood or impact of a risk, lowering its residual risk score. Residual risk refers to what remains after defenses are considered. For example, a vulnerability in an internal system might have high theoretical severity, but if access is restricted to a handful of trusted administrators, the effective residual risk is much lower. This ensures organizations do not overreact to issues already well contained. Normalization is often necessary when comparing risks across very different types of assets. A cloud storage misconfiguration and an on-premises server vulnerability may not be directly comparable without a consistent framework. Normalization techniques adjust scores so that risks can be compared on a level playing field, regardless of asset class. This might involve scaling or adjusting inputs so that cloud, on-premises, data, and application risks all fit within a common scoring model. Without normalization, executive decision-makers may struggle to understand whether a high score in one domain is equivalent in urgency to a high score in another. Composite risk indices provide a way to summarize multiple risks into a single, high-level picture. Instead of reviewing dozens or hundreds of individual findings, executives may prefer to see aggregated scores across business units or asset categories. These portfolio views help leaders allocate resources at scale, such as deciding which department receives additional funding for remediation. For example, a composite score might reveal that the finance department consistently carries higher risk exposure than marketing, prompting leadership to focus more investment there. Composite indices translate technical detail into digestible insights for organizational steering. Establishing thresholds is essential to ensure consistent responses. Thresholds define what levels of risk are acceptable, what requires mitigation, and what demands immediate action. For instance, a score below 5 may be acceptable and only monitored, while scores between 6 and 8 require planned mitigation within a set time frame. Scores above 8 may demand emergency response. Defining these boundaries ahead of time avoids endless debates and ensures predictable, fair treatment of risks. It also aligns teams around shared expectations, so no one is surprised when a high-scoring issue triggers rapid intervention. Backtesting adds rigor to scoring models by checking their predictive power against past incidents. By applying the current scoring model retroactively to historical data, organizations can see whether high-scored risks in the past actually led to serious incidents. If the model rated something low that later caused major damage, adjustments are necessary. This process mirrors how meteorologists refine forecasts by comparing predictions with actual weather. Backtesting ensures that scoring models remain accurate, relevant, and trusted as decision-making tools rather than arbitrary scales disconnected from real-world outcomes. Transparency is critical in risk scoring. If stakeholders do not understand how a score was calculated, they may dismiss or ignore it. Documenting the formulas, weights, and assumptions behind scores builds trust. For example, a report might state that a risk score of 12 was derived by multiplying asset value, exploitability, and impact, then adjusting for active threat intelligence. When decision-makers can trace the logic, they are more likely to act confidently on the recommendations. Transparency transforms scores from mysterious numbers into clear, evidence-based guidance. A practical way to internalize scoring concepts is through a simple exercise. Imagine 3 findings: a missing patch on a payroll database, weak passwords on a Wi-Fi router, and an exposed file share containing archived records. Using a basic scoring matrix where asset value, exploitability, and impact are each rated from 1 to 5, scores are calculated. The payroll database might score highest due to sensitive data and high exploitability, while the Wi-Fi router ranks lower. Ranking them reveals clear priorities. Patch the payroll system immediately, strengthen router access next, and plan controls for the file share. This exercise highlights how scoring transforms vague concerns into structured priorities. Without a system, every risk can feel equally urgent, which often results in paralysis or random fixes. Scoring gives clarity, showing not just what risks exist, but which deserve attention first. It also reinforces that risk analysis is not about eliminating all risks, an impossible task, but about directing energy where it matters most. By practicing with examples, learners see how scoring supports both technical teams and business leaders in making deliberate, justified decisions about security investments. At its heart, risk analysis and scoring are about communication and prioritization. Numbers and categories give shape to complex situations, making them understandable across technical and business boundaries. When done carefully, analysis connects the dots between raw findings and actionable strategy. It ensures that scarce resources are invested wisely, that urgent threats are handled quickly, and that all stakeholders can see the logic behind decisions. In this way, risk analysis is not just a technical activity but a bridge between cybersecurity experts and organizational leaders. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Sensitivity analysis allows organizations to test the resilience of their scoring models by exploring what happens when weightings are changed. For example, if an organization normally prioritizes asset value heavily, a sensitivity analysis might adjust the weight so that exploitability becomes more dominant. The team can then see if the rank order of risks changes significantly. If small shifts in weight cause dramatic changes in results, the model may be too fragile. If rankings remain stable, the model is likely robust. This process reassures decision-makers that their scoring approach is not just accurate for one narrow configuration but reliable across different perspectives. Automated scoring pipelines have become increasingly common as organizations handle large volumes of data from scans, monitoring systems, and threat feeds. These pipelines ingest raw telemetry, enrich it with asset context, and compute scores without human intervention. For instance, a vulnerability scanner may automatically push its results into a pipeline that tags each finding with asset importance, applies exploitability weights, and then creates a risk score. Tickets can then be generated and assigned to responsible teams. Automation ensures speed and consistency, but it must be designed carefully to avoid overloading staff with too many findings or misclassifying issues. Even with automation, human review gates are essential, especially for high-impact or ambiguous items. Automated systems may lack context, such as knowing whether a system is about to be decommissioned or whether a vulnerability is already mitigated by compensating controls. Human reviewers act as a sanity check, validating whether high-scoring issues truly warrant urgent action. This prevents wasted effort and helps maintain trust in the system. For example, a ticket flagged as critical by automation might be downgraded by a reviewer who knows the asset is isolated from production. Combining automation with review creates both efficiency and accuracy. Visualizing risk portfolios turns raw numbers into patterns that are easier to grasp. Heat maps are a common tool, plotting likelihood against impact to show where risks cluster in high-danger zones. Trending charts reveal whether overall risk levels are rising or falling over time, while leaderboards highlight the top risks or most vulnerable systems. These visuals are especially valuable in executive briefings, where time is short and the audience may not be technically inclined. A single well-designed chart can communicate urgency more effectively than a detailed spreadsheet, making visualization a critical part of risk communication. When reporting to executives, translating scores into business language is essential. Technical details such as CVSS numbers or exploit vectors may mean little to a non-technical leader. Instead, reports should express risks in terms of financial exposure, regulatory penalties, or service disruptions. For example, rather than saying, quote, vulnerability X scored 8.5, one might say, this issue could disrupt online ordering for 3 days, potentially costing $500,000. By aligning risk scores with business outcomes, security professionals make it easier for leaders to understand the significance of findings and approve the resources needed for remediation. Scores also drive remediation prioritization rules. Organizations often set bands that dictate how quickly an issue must be addressed. A high-risk item might require resolution within 72 hours, medium risk within 30 days, and low risk within 90 days. These rules balance urgency with practical resource constraints. For instance, an IT team cannot realistically patch hundreds of issues immediately, so score-driven prioritization ensures the most dangerous ones are handled first. This structured approach reduces the chance of critical vulnerabilities lingering unaddressed, while also preventing burnout by spreading work across timelines proportionate to risk. Linking scoring outcomes to key performance indicators, KPIs, allows organizations to measure progress in managing risk. Examples include tracking the percentage of high-risk issues that have been mitigated, monitoring the rate at which residual risk declines, or measuring remediation velocity, the average time to close out findings. These KPIs help leaders gauge whether risk management processes are working as intended. If high-risk issues persist unresolved for months, it signals a problem with resourcing or governance. By tying scores to measurable outcomes, organizations can shift from simply identifying risks to continuously improving how they handle them. Governance around scoring models ensures they remain trustworthy and effective over time. Just as business environments and threats evolve, scoring approaches must be updated. A review cadence, such as quarterly or annually, allows teams to evaluate whether current weights, thresholds, and methodologies still align with organizational priorities. Changes should be formally approved, versioned, and documented so that stakeholders know which model was in effect at any point in time. This discipline prevents ad hoc adjustments that could undermine consistency, while also allowing thoughtful adaptation as new technologies and risks emerge. Integrating external benchmarks strengthens the credibility of scoring by providing context. Industry comparisons, such as sector-specific risk averages or data from regulatory reports, help organizations understand whether their risk posture is typical or unusual. For instance, a bank might learn that its risk scores for phishing exposure are higher than industry peers, prompting a deeper focus on user awareness training. External benchmarks also provide assurance to regulators or partners that the organization is not evaluating itself in isolation, but measuring against established norms. This context helps leaders calibrate their response and investments. Periodic audits of scoring outputs are vital for detecting flaws such as bias or model drift. Over time, scoring models may start producing results that systematically misprioritize certain risks. For example, if cloud systems consistently score lower than on-premises ones despite evidence of incidents, the model may be underweighting relevant cloud factors. Audits check whether the outputs align with reality, ensuring that risk scoring remains a reliable decision tool. By treating the model itself as something to be monitored and improved, organizations protect themselves against complacency and ensure that prioritization remains fair and accurate. Training for risk owners is another critical piece of the puzzle. Even the best scoring system will fail if the people responsible for remediation do not understand how to interpret scores. Training sessions should explain how scores are calculated, what thresholds mean, and what actions are expected. For example, owners should know that a critical score requires a fast response and cannot be deferred without leadership approval. Clear education empowers owners to take responsibility rather than feeling overwhelmed or confused by abstract numbers. In this way, scoring becomes a shared language across technical and business teams. Ultimately, scoring is valuable only if it is tied directly to action. A cycle must be maintained. Compute the scores, rank the risks, verify the findings, and act with remediation plans supported by owners and governance oversight. Scoring that is opaque, ignored, or untested offers little benefit. But when transparent, validated, and integrated with decision-making, it becomes a powerful engine for prioritization and continuous improvement. The goal is not just to create tidy numbers, but to drive meaningful change, ensuring that risks are not just identified, but actively reduced in line with the organization's risk appetite. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.